It's possible, as long as government officials can use to their own ends the classification privilege of the government. That is, to stamp a document in the national interest if in fact it is not in the national interest. I've often doubted the wisdom of such a blanket use of the classification system in the government, because there are many documents which are classified top secret and even higher than top secret, which are not concerned with the national defense. They're concerned with protecting the reputation or the advocacy position of a particular official who made a recommendation or an executive who decided in behalf of that recommendation. I think that this system of classification has been widely abused, not only by previous administrations, but by all administrations since the system of classification was first employed. It seems to me that there should be a more selective use of the terms top secret and for official use only, and other similar classifications.
How do you think about the way that the youth in all of the minority groups, including the American Indians, the Afro-Americans, and the Mexican-Americans are going about it? Do you have a way you think is better than protest and dissent?
It sure is. I can go to Washington, D.C. with a smile on my face and have honey in my pocket and get what I want. I put the citizenship bill over that way in 1924 when Cal Coolidge was a president. If I go down there with a bottle of vinegar, I'm going to turn everything against me. I don't think that the younger generation is bad, but it's a few bad leaders that gets amongst them and agitates trouble.
Read, but apparently he doesn't want to. 10,000 of the people charged with helping Johnny read and learn to read are librarians, and 10,000 of the members of the American Library Association are gathered in Dallas this week to talk about why Johnny can but doesn't read. Librarians are surrounded in books, they're steeped in books, they live with books, and the convention is no exception. Here in Memorial Auditorium, the walls are lined with books. There are 400 booths of books, from book publishers, booksellers, book agents, and authors signing autographs. One of the people who's going to teach youngsters how to use those books is Dr. Ruth Love Holloway, director of HEW's Office of Education's Right to Read program. Dr. Holloway spoke at a noon luncheon today. She issued a challenge to the American Library Association, and before she spoke, I talked to her about that challenge.
Oh, I definitely feel that most children in this country can read and can learn to read. The problem is they are not reading. And even in some instances where children actually have the skills of reading, they are not reading. They don't have the desire to read for a multiplicity of reasons. It's not a simplistic kind of problem, but most people who have average intelligence can in fact learn to read, and most people have average intelligence.
Then why aren't the children reading?
Well, as I indicated, that there are a variety of reasons for it, and without trying to place blame, because I don't really like to do that. I think the issue is one of finding resolutions rather than placing blame. But one of the reasons it seems to me that they are not reading is because, as I indicated, we have not tailored the program to meet their needs. We've not always made available the kind of exciting materials that are necessary.
The American Library Association's convention is going to talk not only about books, but about youth, about people and their problems as they concern books. And they'll take the rest of the week here in Dallas to do so. Phil Reynolds, Channel 8 News on the Move at Memorial Auditorium.
Well, we think it's a great step forward for the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and particularly for the regional airport. It will assure us that we will have continued work upon this new facility that we're building. And in our agreement, we have made the regional airport a common working ground for both of these local unions.
Cannot speak English well enough to converse at a normal rate, so he was provided earphones through which a translator will be able to keep him apprised of the court activities. The first two prospective jurors called said that they did not believe in the death penalty because of the New Testament and were dismissed. After that, jury selection settled down to a pretty normal pace. However, it is anticipated by everyone here that it could take as long as Thursday to get a jury impaneled. Jerry Taft, Channel 8 News on the Move at the Bell County Courthouse in Belton.
The Fort Worth City Council will probably act next week on an amendment to the city's public accommodations ordinance. In a letter to the City Council this morning, James Gaskins of Fort Worth pointed out that the city's public accommodation ordinance does not apply to daycare centers. He says that in privately operated daycare centers in Fort Worth, there's considerable discrimination against blacks. City Council members seemed favorably inclined to pass the amendment to the ordinance that Mr. Gaskins asked for. Ora G. Compton is chairman of the city's Human Relations Commission. What is the situation on daycare centers?
Through voluntary efforts of the commission, about half of the commercial daycare centers, nurseries, have signed commitments that they will serve children without regard to race, color, or creed. we really do not know, except for 4 or 5 that we know are discriminating. We don't know what the balance of the daycare centers are doing. Because we've had complaints about 4 or 5.
Well, why hasn't this already been taken care of through anti-discriminatory acts and ordinances?
Well, unfortunately, it is not covered in either federal, state, or local legislation. And I think one of the reasons, quite frankly, is that it's easier to get legislation passed that you do it by stages. And so they, in the first 1964 passage of the Civil Rights Act, they just didn't include these because they felt there'd be more political opposition to it.
Mr. Compton says that his commission has been working on an amendment to the Public Accommodations Ordinance. If it passes next week, and it looks like it will with the predisposition of the council members, then one of the last bastions of discrimination in the law in Fort Worth will be eliminated. This is Jay Lewis, Channel 8 News on the Move, Fort Worth.
There's been quite a bit of concern. He talked about the stupendously, steeply rising cost of our state government. He neglected to mention, however, that many of the bills that were passed in the 61st session of the legislature were directly responsible for this increase in taxes. And if he had been so concerned about economy in our government, I wonder why he didn't use his veto power to a greater extent in 1969. I noticed that he made no decision as to whether or not he's going to run for a 3rd term. I presume that is because he is rather uncertain of the future at this time. I will make no comment about that because those are matters best left up to the federal grand jury and other people.
Guzman and Lopez were transferred from Dallas County to Bell County late last week as a security measure. And security is obvious here, but not overstated. There are some Texas Rangers, there are a few deputies brought in from Dallas County, and the leaves have been canceled for all Bell County officials during the course of the trial. Sheriff Lester Gunn of Bell County told me that he has not seen any problems thus far and does not anticipate any problems. Still, he is watching security very closely. This morning, Guzman and Lopez made the first of what promises to be a long series of trips from the jail where they are housed here in Bell County to the courthouse, a distance of just 1 block away. They are transferred in chains. They are transferred by automobile, although it would be only a short walk. And there are always 3 deputies with each of the men during the course of the transfer. But the move this morning was a very careful one with no problems seen. Today's opening round in the court went smoothly. Defense attorneys asked that separate trials be granted Guzman and Lopez. Judge R.T. Scales of Dallas, hearing the case here, overruled that motion for lack of justification. Attorney Metcalf, who represents Lopez, said the motion would almost certainly come up again later.
We're hoping that we can be an involved group in the planning of the routing and the scheduling and the coordinating body to try to get a good cross-country rail service through Dallas, to give Dallas access to various parts of the nation through rail traffic.
Amtrak virtually promised that traffic would come through Dallas anyway. Do you think now that there's a good chance it won't?
I don't know that there's a good chance that it won't, but our position on the city is that we would like to be involved in the planning of that service so that we can coordinate our services with the Amtrak board. For example, the regional planning regarding mass transit and rapid transit. I would like to see the city be involved in coordinating that type of program in through the Amtrak program.
It's a new challenge for me to be associated with this new country club in the North Dallas, Carrollton area. They have beautiful property out there. It's going to lend itself to a beautiful golf course. There'll be added attractions, and I hope to add my part by bringing some new, fresh ideas from the experiences I've had in country clubs and on golf courses throughout the world.
Now, despite this handicap, the members nonetheless worked their way through a hard session, long hours, and they wandered through a maze of diverse subjects, including such things as the elegy to the Boston Strangler and the great meal sack stuffing of the daylight saving controversy. And it culminated in a last week with an almost hopeless logjam of legislation and an unparalleled display of invectiveness and bitterness, so that on that last night I was afraid for a while it would degenerate into a good old-fashioned Irish Donnybrook.